Okina semdol kake mofaseda.
What's up?
Hi, guys. Welcome to Talking in Stations. Matterall and Carneros are not here this morning, but we are joined with Elise Randolph from Pandemic.
Hey, how's it going?
And I am January Valentine. I'm the Talking in Stations producer. Today we are doing something a little bit different. We're going to go look back throughout the 2009, look at some of the big campaigns and highlights of the year. With us today, we have Harvey Skywalker.
Comrades, hello.
And Pro God Legend from Test.
How's it going?
Cool. So 2019 was a really busy year. I spent quite a few hours, days, kind of coming through battle reports and Zkillboard and Reddit and all of these kind of news sources. Although that was kind of not really, Reddit's not really a news source, but whatever. So yeah, 2019 was really busy. There was a lot of important things that were happening. And it was just kind of cool looking back in through past a few months ago, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and looking how these things were set up today. So we're going to start actually Pro God with you. There was a lot of setup from the campaign that you guys had up in the Low Sec Forge area that actually happened in October of 2018. What was going on then?
So yeah, like after the big Southern War, I think everyone kind of went home and took a break for a little while. It was PanFam that was attacking us, so we didn't lose any space, and they just went home. We went home. Everyone took a break for a little bit, and I think at the time GOTG was being reset so that whole situation was. I still don't know exactly when it went down because it was so crazy, but I think GOTG got reset by Horde, and then NC Dot tried to stay out of it, but eventually they got sucked into it, and they were on both sides for a little bit, and then they reset GOTG and Horde, and then they reblued Horde, and all kinds of crazy stuff right there. But for the most part, we saw that the Northern Coalition, or PanFam, or whatever they were calling themselves at the time, with CO2 and all them, were was having some trouble and going through turmoil. So we said, "There's an opportunity. Let's go up there and try and try and at least drive a dagger in between them a little more, or separate them a little more, and get some content at the same time." So we knew that, having watched Goons try to deploy up north without supercaps a year ago when they went to Hakona, that you can't just go straight north and try and sit in low-sec next to whoever has a giant supercap fleet. I mean, they'll just sit on top of you with supercaps and you'll never do anything. So we tried to do we came up with a stepping stone idea where we were gonna, before we went north to low-sec, we were going to try and get some content out of it first to get all of our pilots, because we'd had a couple of failed northern deployments in the past year before that. We try to get all of our pilots interested in it. So we came up with the idea to go after Horde's market for Czar and Perimeter. And at the time, we didn't know too much about it. We knew that it made a good bit of money, and we had some vague intel that was kind of like not even secondhand, like third-hand intel that Horde was making like 500 billion a month, or that the whole Fortizar made 500 billion a month. And we were like, God, that sounds really good. We'll go for it. And so we put together this big plan. We showed up, we reinforced it, and then we showed up to the armor timer with like 600, 700 people, and Horde didn't even form for it. So we picked that. At that point, Matterall actually sold us 2 Keepstars live on Talking in Stations while we were killing it, and we decided, fuck it, let's put up a Keepstar. And so we put the Keepstar up in Perimeter, and once we started making money off that thing, we realized like, holy shit, Horde was making a lot more than 500 billion a month. Like it was because we set the tax to 0.3% and we were making more than 500 billion, and they had it, and we had competition. People were dropping ASBELs to kind of like, compete with our Plex orders, and then Horde had it at 0.5% with no competition for like a year plus. So I can only imagine how much money they made. It was a good bit, but yeah, once we got a little taste of that, we were like, this is a good life, and let's keep going. So we spent like 3 or 4 weeks in high sec getting our stuff ready, knowing that we were going to deploy somewhere in the north. We looked around a little bit. We picked Oizhinen, which is the low sec system that connects to BWF, partly because it was far enough away from the NCPL Supercap fleet. They were like, if they don't immediately deploy, like if we just go up there and say we're there for content and we don't like invade Geminate or anything, and we just stick to that story, then maybe they won't bring their whole Supercap fleet, and maybe we can do some things. And it worked for a while. So we put down an Amarr faction fort in Oizhinen, which for those who don't know, Amarr faction forts have they have more armor resist, I think, either that or a bonus armor HP. They get a whole lot more armor tank than a regular Fortizar, and if you fit it right, it takes like upwards of an hour. It takes close to an hour. I think it is actually over an hour just to shoot through the armor timer, even if you're at full damage cap. So our entire goal was to get them to come fight us in low sec on our armor timer, and allow us to basically call in allies and do whatever we wanted. If they were going to bring supers, we wanted them to fight us in low sec on our Amarr faction fort. So we dropped that. They reinforced it. We dropped another Amarr faction fort just to make sure that, even if we lost one, we could still go to it. We dropped like 4 or 5 Fortizars just to make sure they didn't kill it. And we skirmished for a little while, and we had a lot of success at the beginning. November, we were mostly fighting in Geminate, and we were doing pretty good. We won a couple of really big fights, and we were mostly successfully keeping it small without the super fleet coming out yet. We were able to use carriers in Geminate, and so the fact that we weren't getting our carriers dropped in Geminate kind of made us like, maybe we can be a little more risky with our capitals. So December rolled around, and they decided to start reinforcing. That's when the NC Super Fleet rolled a little closer to us. And we were able to actually draw 3 fights in Oizhinen exactly how we planned it. And we killed like 67 billion in facts both times, and along with some other capitals. And we were even able to log on the few supers we brought with us one time, because we were using carriers on our Fortizar, and they were dropping like 300 kilometers off our Fortizar. So we're using carriers for SS, and then a bunch of long range SIG tanking fleets like AB Eagles to just shoot down the capitals. And they'd sit there with Titans and Supers and Facts and a ball, and they wouldn't bring subcaps. And I think we one time spent like 3 hours shooting Facts while they shot our 3 hours because it's tie-dye, while they shot our faction fort into armor. And it was pretty successful every time. It was basically going exactly how we drew it up from October to December. It was great. But what no one knew, and I'll have to give Gavin some credit here, as painful as this is, what no one knew at the time is that ever since we took the faction fort, I mean the perimeter Fortizar, Gobbins and I had been talking in PM, and Gobbins and I have worked together for a very long time. And so we know each other pretty well. And Gobbins knows I'm pretty competitive. And so he was doing a very good job of talking shit every single day, even when they were losing, which is actually worse. It pissed me off even more when they were losing. I don't mind if you talk shit when you win, but if you find a way to talk shit when you're losing, it just frustrates me so much.
It's like the DBRB effect. That's what DBRB does perfectly.
I know,
no matter
right?
what you do, he takes it as a win, so you never win.
Yeah, so like I thought we were doing really well, and God was just talking shit every day, and I was just getting more and more pissed off. And in hindsight, maybe I even knew what he was doing then, but I just kind of forgot about it. But it was very obvious he was trying to egg us on into committing to more than just chilling in Oizhinen and Losec, because he can't necessarily call his people to really commit to a battle or go to war or call on NCPL until we actually present a threat. And if we're just staging in Losec and not doing anything, we're not really a threat. So finally, in January, he tipped me over the edge, and I called this big this big alliance meeting and wrote a big Reddit post, and I said, "Fuck goblins, we're going to war. We're going to see where he hid all that money that he made in high sec. He's certainly not giving it to his members. They don't even have SRPs, probably embezzling it or RMTing it or something." I don't think I said RMT. I didn't think it was RMT, but we were pretty vindictive in our post, and we came out and immediately NCPL Supercap Fleet came. Horde started using their supers, and we thought like they were afraid to use them because we were getting away with using carriers in situations I never thought we should get away with. Like they'd have their whole super fleet in the field, and our carriers were just sitting there untethered. And I'm like, why don't they just drop right on top of them? Literally, next fight, we use our carriers. They drop a 300, boom, 80 dreads right on top of our carriers. And I'm like, well, okay, well, I guess they did know they could do that. So we lost like 20 or 30 carriers and some dreads, and we replaced them, and I was like, shit, this is not going to go well. We should just try and get one, because we built this big giant dread cache. The whole plan was to see if we could, because we had a lot of money now, if we could build enough dreads to replace them mid-fight and actually, come out on top in a small little super fight. Not a big one, but a tiny one. So, the idea is like if you've got a dread fleet and you jump them in, that's 5 minutes of orange timer. You can replace those dreads 2 times before you're capping out your 30-minute orange timer, and you can't jump those people in anymore. So we had enough dreads to go in with 3 full waves, 250 and then 250 and then 250. And at the time before I declared war, people, the amount of supers they were using were small, and maybe we could have pulled it off. We just weren't done building the dreads yet. But by the time we declared war, they were dropping the full PAM-FAM super fleet, and I was like, fuck. The only time we could really do this is AUTZ, when the numbers might be small enough and all their FCs might not be online. And so I reached out to Snuff, I reached out to Goons, I reached out to Initiative, which was never like a guaranteed thing that they would all showed up. But somehow they all agreed to it. I had to offer the SRP all of Snuff's dreads just to get them to show up, which I did. So that's another thing. But we put together in a course, because we weren't able to do anything. Like, it was like day 7, we had done nothing, and I was like, God damn it, this is a terrible idea. So we put together a plan. We're gonna drop a Fortizar. Then me being lazy, and not subscribing more of my alt accounts, I'm using like my main to sign in the Fortizar, and Elo saw it. And so I lost the first Fortizar, and I'm like, all right, we'll do it again in 2 days. And so we finally got the Fortizar dropped, and I'm starting to get, we're about 5-6 hours out, and I'm starting to get worried that we're not going to get enough numbers, but I'm trying not to give away what we're doing. So I'm like, hey guys, potential big fight in the morning. Not saying you should show up. It's not that big of a deal, but maybe something big will go down. Just saying, wink, wink. And I did that a little too much, and NCPL and them got kind of picked up on what was going down. And so they all, a lot of their FCs stayed awake. They started pinging their supers and titans, and they basically baited us. We kind of knew it was bait, but by the time we got there and they had dropped their 20 supers and 1 titan, and we were deciding whether we were wanting to go in or not, we kind of knew it was going to end that way. But we were like, fuck, we got all dressed up to go. I'm not going to be able to convince these guys to show up again, and half of them aren't even really risking their own dreads. So fuck it, let's go. And we went in. We did a big dread drop. We didn't kill much, and we lost everything. Not everything, actually, because we didn't even use half of the dread cache. I think every test pilot lost 2 dreads. And this was so unorganized. The idea was to have all of Initiative Goons and Snuff in our staging so they could get more dreads too, but we didn't have time to set that up. And if right before the fight we started bringing all these groups you didn't know were supposed to be coming into our staging system to set their clones, it would have been obvious. So the idea was to, after they died, bridge their pods to Ocean and get them to dock and get dreads. But when we did that, we bridged all their pods to Ocean, they docked up, and then they opened a trade all at the same time with our guy who was handing dreads out, which of course instantly crashed his client. So we were like, all right, so we can't replace our dreads anymore. This is definitely fucked. And so we went see dread, and we jumped out maybe like 10 or 20 of our 250 dreads, not a lot. And at that point, it actually wasn't that bad. And I was like, all right, campaign over. We can go home. I don't have to keep trying to drag this out. I think Goons did some stuff afterwards, but that was pretty much the end of the Jania thing. And that was like 2 weeks into January, so that kicked off 2019 pretty good.
Yeah, it's hard to look back and remember like 2019. If you're sitting here right now, it kind of feels like nothing really happened. But then when January like started compiling the show notes, I was like, holy shit, a lot happened. I forgot all this stuff that happened.
Well,
in
I was going to say that because I was looking at the show notes. I think 2019 gets a bad rep because it was like peak Eve is dying. Like Eve is always dying, but this year it hit another level, especially once the Chaos era hit. But like I kept trying to remind people when everyone was bitching on Reddit about the Chaos stuff, I was like, you guys know there's like a real war going on right now between two major blocks, like 1,000 people fighting all the time and stuff like that. And everyone's like, oh, it's not the same. And I'm like, why is it not the same? But, I guess it is what it is. The Chaos era was hard not to talk about.
Yeah, it's when all of Eve isn't at war with one block, everyone's like, oh, nah, Eve's dying. But so much stuff happened. Like you mentioned the perimeter Keepstar, like that was a huge thing.
Oh yeah,
I remember all of Eve
trade wars, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, all of Eve was like everyone had like an opinion about it too. Like everyone was like, "Oh, these fuck tests," and "Oh, fuck Gavin." So it was really funny to watch it unfold. And then as soon as you guys put up the Keepstar, this one group was just trying to woo all the Plex traders, and they would throw out Asbels like every day to try and undercut you. Oh, it was so good. It's like it's peak Eve right there.
And then there was that. So like during that, they were redoing the high-sec war mechanics at the same time. They basically picked the worst time to do that. So they roll out the new high-sec war deck mechanics, which of course the people dropping the Asbels and ourselves as well. We exploited it once or twice. They're trying to find ways to break it. At least 3 or 4 different times they found ways to clear our war deck on their Asbel right before the timer, so we couldn't even kill it. We did it once when our Keepstar was about to be put into structure. We were able to clear the war deck on our Keepstar and save it from going into structure. Like it was just such a shit show for a while. And then of course, it was like armies of Feroxes and high sec with no bubbles and like infinite supply of ships. I think it got very clear that like there's really not much you can do if 250 Feroxes can always warp to 0 on you.
And yeah, that's what it devolved into, like all these crazy tactics to just Feroxes at 0. Like that was the end game meta for the high sec wars.
It got boring actually. Like it was weird because for a little while, like everyone I talked to was like, these high sec battles are amazing. No capitals. Like this is what Eve is supposed to be. Just subcaps. And then like by the second month, I was like, guys, we're just warping 1,000 Feroxes to 0 to each other and calling targets. This is not exactly fun. Like it gets boring.
I was talking to Killa B, and he was super hype about it for the first like 4 weeks. He's like, "Oh, this owns. Like you don't have to worry about shit. This is." And then at the end, he was just like, "Yeah, we killed like 300 things, but it was really boring, man. Like I can't take it."
Well, it's basically like who has more fitted out Feroxes in a hangar somewhere in perimeter that they can hand out. And, we're sitting there just following the fight like on Z-Kill. And we're like, well, they killed 10 in the last minute, but we killed 9. And then they killed 12, but we killed 11. I think we're doing okay. I think we can, like it's just what's your kill rate basically? Is it even? Okay, I think we have more Feroxes than they do. We'll be all right.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, really interesting dynamic when null sec players go to high sec. And then, as you mentioned, they changed the war deck, which made things really difficult because people that were sharing a war but in different alliances couldn't rep each other anymore.
Yeah.
So without going like global criminal, so there was like 2 or 3 fights where Concord showed up. I remember that one.
Oh yeah, that was always the funniest stuff, is watching Concord like pick people off during those fights. Like, oh, he fucked up and they fucked up. We lost a couple of command ships that way. I still don't know how, but well, they probably fucked up and lied about it. But
just got final blow on Bjorn on 2 Twitch streams at once. Sorry,
Harvey the hacker, man. He's stream sniping poor Bjorn.
What happened to the Jan and Fortzars in the end?
Oh, after the dread drop, we after we lost all our dreads, there was nothing we could really do. We couldn't look scary anymore, so they immediately RF'd our Fortizars. So we were like, all right, campaign over, let's go home, which was fine. You know, I would much rather that than trying to sit there and you know, stress about how to turn a terrible idea into a good one for another 2 or 3 weeks before we came to the same conclusion. So you know, just going out in the big bang of glory, you know, kind of a Kurt Cobain style wasn't so bad.
I mean, Eve does need more of that, right? People
Yeah.
need to just say, you know, fuck it, whatever. I've got a lot of money. Let's just.
Yeah.
It's easier than moving 750 Naglfars too.
Yeah, I mean, those dreads were basically guaranteed to die. We didn't plan on bringing them home for sure, so they needed to go somehow.
The writing was on the wall for those faction forts in Jania when you named one of them your move, Harvey.
Yeah, I didn't name that one, but yeah, our group that used to tangle with you a lot in the last war decided to do that. They enjoy fucking with, and vice versa, I'm assuming.
Peak and messing with people? No, I don't believe it.
But yeah, I think that takes us through 2 weeks of 2019. Let's just you know, let's get into week 3, I guess.
Some other cool stuff happened in 2019 that's like not Null SEC related at all, and it's actually not Null Block related at all somehow. But I think it does merit mentioning because it's one of the kind of like one of the stories that you don't really hear about, and you probably will never hear about. There is like in 2019, CSB Delegate Zero, and I assume his team, it might just be him, started to increase like talking points and stuff like that for the roleplay community, which you might be scoffing like roleplay. But like the stories of invasion and how everything ties together, that's all roleplay related. And it's super cool. I highly suggest reading some like chronicles and stuff, enjoying the roleplay server just to read if you're interested at all. But the NPCs started messing around, and it created like this massive brawl between two roleplay groups that ended up entangling every roleplay group in Eve in a system called Thebeka. And like there's this massive fight over Fortizar. It's probably the biggest fight that ever happened for the roleplay community, at least in the last decade or so. And it really does like set the mood for what the roleplay community ends up doing throughout the rest of the year. And it even continues, like it even happened like 2 or 3 days ago, like a massive fight. But yeah, so Becca, there's a lot of lore about it. If you just want to Google it, I have a pretty neat battle report of talking to like the FCs of both sides that we never really found a spot to shove it out in, but I might just throw it up on the Talking stations anyway, because it's really, really interesting. Talking to Deep Spar from the Minmatar side and Baleful Dysnomia from the RC Elkin from the Amara side. And it was really, really cool just to watch it all play out. And it was also really funny because they are role players and they're an interesting breed of people. But that entire community has had like this huge boom. Their like Discord server moved from like 30 people to like 1,000 in 3 or 4 months following it. So shout out to the roleplay guys. Keep owning. And that happened in January of this year.
Yeah, honestly, going through the year, there was just so much going on. Even while this campaign stuff was going on, even in the north towards Pureblind and Fade, in those areas, there were a lot of entities just kind of like skirmishing it out. I think Triumvirate had tried to kind of like carve a piece of Pureblind out for itself, and they were just not doing well. They actually lost like 60 billion in Macarials when they got bosoned by a Titan that they tackled.
Well, they lost like 4 or 5 Titans moving up there, didn't they? That was something that happened, if not in January, in late December.
Right. And speaking of Titans, you guys lost, I think, 2
segue.
Titans and 2 Nyxes moving up to support your campaign by Snuffed Out. And
no, we lost it on the way back, actually.
Oh, on the way back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
The great snuff betrayal.
Indeed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. We got our pound of meat when we defended the Cabal Keepstar and everybody freaked the fuck out.
It's okay. Snuff doesn't exist anymore, so you get to claim victory.
Test outlasts another one, right?
Bronzer said you did lose some on the way up, and Bronzer never lies.
Yeah, some super carriers moving by themselves. Who cares?
I
Bronzer
mean,
cares.
when you're moving caps and super, someone's gonna die. Like someone's just gonna die. That's just
Especially if you're letting them
Someone
do it by
gets
themselves and saying it's entirely voluntary if you want to come up here.
Yeah, that's a great strategy.
It's entirely
Yeah,
voluntary.
that way
if you
I don't
wanna
have
feed
any
Snuff.
responsibility. Yeah, that way I don't have any responsibility.
So Harvey, looking down south now, you were in Skill yourself at the time. You arrived kind of late, around March, I think. But perhaps you can give us kind of an insight on. So Skill yourself, as everyone knew at this time, had claimed a large chunk of space in the east. They had basically taken over the old DRF Federation spaces and were now renting them out. And they had kind of gotten involved, I guess, in the fraternity legacy coalition conflict. They had been officially blued by a fraternity. They were staging in, I think, Tenerife. So what was going on in there?
I think
Well-
that's a little out of order there, but yeah, Harvey can speak to it.
I can try and remember. I'll try and get the order right. I'm pretty sure before any of the fraternity stuff happened, Skill U went on its own and started picking on Legacy in Immancy, the alliances they call themselves like Voltron, don't they? Do they still do that?
Yeah,
They're like
so
within Legacy, the Voltron fleets.
Yeah.
And then Tess deployed, I guess you then deployed to shore up that defense.
Yeah, so like after our failed dread bomb, we kind of kept an eye on that, and after a couple of weeks of some big fights down there and them feeding a little bit, although they actually did better than expected. They did pretty well actually.
Yeah, they
But,
didn't feed as much as you
yeah.
expected.
Yeah, let's just say that. But yeah, after a couple weeks of that, we deployed over there to make sure everything stayed under control. And
then
also the fraternity nip was ending soon, and we were pretty sure that was going to go south one way or the other. So it kind of put us in a good position for that.
Yeah, I think Skill U we sort of like, and so I wasn't in Skill U for that initial attacking of Immancy, picking on the Legacy Voltron people. I joined just at the end of that, and yeah, moved south without losing any supers or titans. Crazy. And then
Right.
then I think then we deployed back over there to help fraternity, right, to fight that war. And yeah, had some okay fights, I seem to remember. It was gradually escalating as more and more parties were getting drawn into it. As these sort of things happen, when you get a flashpoint, more and more people get drawn into the conflict, and battle lines are drawn, deals are made.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy of my enemy, etc.
Always.
So I
Yeah,
noticed
that's
a lot
sorry, I
of
was gonna
fights.
say that's
right?
a big thing. Oh, you go.
I'm sorry, Elise, go ahead.
No, it's fine. It was just a random thing from what Harvey was saying. A lot of people joined in that war, like in the South against like the Winter and Fraternity or the Winter and Legacy thing, just because everyone's like, "Oh, I hate Tess. Let's go." They weren't necessarily friends with Fraternity. They were just wanted to shoot Tess.
Yeah, and so PanFam would come and help fraternity a little bit occasionally, and then Goons would be like, "Well, I hate PanFam. I'm going to come and help Legacy." And so
Yeah, I kept trying to explain to some of the people on y'all's side. I was like, we don't actually invite goons to some of these fights. They just show up because they hate you.
No, definitely the blue donut was against the not blue donut on the other side. Obviously.
Right.
The Red Dark, I think that's called.
No, we're called Imperial Legacy, actually. It's one of the better coalition names.
It's a very 40K sounding coalition.
Oh, Matani would approve. So what happened then? I can't remember now. I think we got bored. Probably it got a bit blobby.
You guys
It
went
got a bit
away,
stalemate. I think.
I think that glosses over some of the start of the fraternity thing.
Well,
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
46 DP in Tenerife seemed to be like a huge hotspot. And I think from what Villy was saying a few weeks ago when I was talking to him, that there was an important staging spot for Skill Yourself. And the range on that
I don't
was...
think they were staged in I don't think anyone was ever staged in 4060 DP. It is a critical system. There was a lot of, back and forth over.
Yeah,
but did y'all ever have a fort in 4060?
Skill U was staged in SeaTac J, which is the famous Russian sort of ancestral motherland system in Innsmother, and my corp was deployed in 77S, which was next door to 4060p on the border there.
It wasn't just enough to kick them out of drone land. You had to deface their national monuments too, huh?
Yeah. And I guess they got it back now, though, haven't they? Yeah, so I sat with my my 10 dudes in 77S and basically harassed Fire Coalition because I don't know, got to just keep reminding them, giving them the PTSD. I think we killed like a few jump bridges and RF'd a lot of things, bullied Razor a little bit, made sure that whenever I formed up my 10 guys, that Sedo had to come over and rescue Fire Coalition. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but we messed around a bit. We were annoying, I think.
Yeah, no, it was definitely something. I think the fight that January was referring to, though, is I think right before the NIP ended, we one of our FCs caught some supers from fraternity, and they had planned this little trap, and they caught some supers from fraternity in 77S, and then they decided to go jump our whole super fleet through the gate, out of range of pretty much any reinforcements, and gank those supers, which could have gone very badly. Luckily, they started reapproaching immediately, and only a Komodo got killed. But yeah, that was kind of like it was almost the way the fraternity test war happened was basically just your typical Cold War escalation gone poorly. Shit like that would happen, and we'd realize, wow, both people's super fleets are really close to each other, and we keep dropping capitals. Like something bad could happen, and then of course something bad did happen. So, fraternity wanted us to pull away from the front, basically. And as the NIP was winding down, we're like, we're not going to pull away. You're just going to farm our allies to death. We're going to sit right here. This is our space. We could do what we want. And so they thought that we were going to invade. And then they started bringing in allies. Like they added Black Legion to their alliance. They brought in from Origin to them. They started bluing more people. They blued Skill U, and then we talked to Skill U, and they said, yeah, if it comes down to it, we'll fight with those guys. And then, PanFam started showing up for fights. And so we accused them of getting ready to invade. And they're like, no, you're about to invade. And as the NIP was winding down, it was clear like both people were preparing for a fight, even though no one wanted to admit that they might take the first shot. And I don't know if they would have invaded. It wasn't our original plan to invade. But by the time it got down, once Elo got in fraternity and started doing the Elo things that he does, it was pretty inevitable that a war was going to happen, because Elo's not just going to join fraternity and then Rorqual mine all day. So once the NIP ended, we basically we had what was I guess like a white plan or a red plan for war with fraternity, and it didn't account for all those people bluing it. But basically, the plan was like if the NIP ended and we wanted to go to war with them, we'd go for. We felt like we had super superiority as long as PanFam and Skill U and all of them didn't show up, and PanFam, hadn't lost Tribute and Jimin at the time, so they were pretty far away with their supers, although really not that far once you go through the ATF gate. But we thought we could draw out a big fight at the beginning. We'd made that plan though before anyone I think ever realized how oppressive the new Sino-Jammers were. So when the war started, we instantly, we put our plan into action. We went for a couple of really key iHubs that would bring Sino-Jammers down on their keep stars. We won the first fights that weekend. We actually had a really great opening weekend. We won the fight on the iHub, reinforcing it, and killed like 100 billion. And then we instantly caught like 2 or 3 Titans and killed them. And then we had a spy corp in Fraternity for a while, and we were trying to think of the best way to use it. And as we were looking at the iHub fight on Sunday, that was going to be the big showdown. We were like, God, we need to find a way to get around these Sino-Jammers. So we couldn't think of anything else to do with the spy corp since there's no more SBUs or anything. So we were like, let's try and drop some Sino-Jammers and reinforce them, because there's a hard cap on how many Sino-Jammers you can have in system. You can only have 3. So we thought if we dropped some Sino-Jammers and reinforced them and made the timer after the iHub timer, then they won't be able to drop any more Sino-Jammers of their own. But it was incredibly risky. Like, all they had to do was notice once, just notice it all in 45 minutes that we had just dropped 18 Sino-Jammers and we're shooting them. And of course they did. And then they turned off all the iHub Sino-Jammer upgrades and we weren't able to do anything. We were like, well, we tried. And then on Sunday we showed up, and they brought allies and had 1250, and we had 1250, and we had all our caps for them, and they had all their caps for them. And there was a Sino-Jammer in every system. I couldn't even find a place to Titan Bridge. Like we looked around, we found one system that wasn't Sino-Jammed, like 3 jumps away. And we tried to enter. We split our forces in half and tried to enter the constellation from 2 different sides. And like by the time we were entering the constellation, like the timer was already out. Like there was no shot. We never would have gotten it anyway. And so I think at that point the war settled in, and the Sino-Jammer problem became pretty evident. And so we're like, well, so much for a short war, no Berlin by Christmas, basically. So we kind of settled down and realized it was going to be a long one.
But one thing you forgot before, at the beginning of all that, was the Fire Coalition actually did declare war and say they were going to invade the Torrid. A month
Yeah, I
before.
forgot. It wasn't even Fire. It was Red Alliance and fucking God, what's his name? No, it wasn't X-Death. It was Red Alliance FC. God, I gotta go looking at it.
Or Chutlin?
No, Chutlanen. Yeah, Chutlanen. Yeah, it's him. So they did when Red Alliance joined Fire Coalition, they said they were going to go take their space back and invade Fraternity and all that.
To CJ, basically. To CJ,
yeah, and No Rouse hits us up.
Motherland.
No Rouse hits us up, and he's like, "Dude, what the fuck? You guys are invading?" And I'm like, "What? Dude, I don't speak Russian. I didn't know they were going to say that." And so like we kind of calmed it down, but pretty much anytime they needed a pretext to do anything, they were like, Fire declared war first, and I'm like, whatever. I guess they did technically. Well, yeah, but what's Red Alliance? No, it wasn't even Fire. It was Red Alliance. They couldn't at the time. They've recovered. They're doing well, but at the time they were small and not really capable of much, at least as far as invading Fraternity. So I was like, you guys need to calm down. We didn't go crazy when Skill U and all them showed up on our border for a while. We said, you guys aren't invading. You're just here for content. We get it. It would have been capable of. They could have been capable of understanding what was really happening, but they used it for pretext. That's fine. That's what you do on Eve.
Yeah, I'm not denying it. The inevitability of the conflict, whoever started it, was, the NIP was ending and it was going to happen some way or another, somehow, in some form.
Yeah, for sure.
So Harvey, what was your guys' relationship with Scourge? Because they had been kind of not independent, but they had been kind of like standing on their own for a while. They'd kind of do their own thing. And all of a sudden they started showing up to these timers with you guys and just kind of absolutely wrecking shit, in their Nightmare in Loki.
Who?
Scourge.
Oh, yeah, Scourge. They're cool.
Yeah, so Scourge, the guy, funnily enough, Scourge essentially condensed down into one corp and joined Skill U a little bit after that. And they're now still in one corp and are the corp. They're like the sister corp now to my corp in our little alliance in the north. So they haven't disappeared. Seth
Nice.
is still. I speak to him every day, and we co-FC stuff and that. So
He's a good man. Good job.
yeah,
Glad he's still
he's
playing.
a wild man as well. He is definitely a wild
for
man.
sure.
He doesn't want to make too many friends. He wants as many targets as possible, which I can get behind.
Yeah, we had him on the show once, actually a few times, and he just seems like a hoot and a half, dude. He's like, yeah, I don't care about blues, I don't care about friends, I just want to go out and kill people, and that's what I want to do. And he was just super passionate about it.
Yeah, he still is. He's a good dude.
I'm
Sometimes it
glad.
can be hard to. Sometimes you have to thread a fine line when you're trying to stay independent and do things in Null SEC.
Yeah.
He can make that hard, but I love him for it. It's fine.
Well, he had a very capable alliance at that time. I remember
Sure.
a few years ago, there was some conflict, and I know Mercenary Coalition was down there, but they would just punch above their weight in so many fights. They would literally bring equal numbers to some of the other dudes. And I think like Pandemic Horde was down there at the time, and they would just kill so much just because each individual pilot was so capable. And yeah, they were a great enemy to fight.
They reminded me a lot of Dark Side, if you guys remember, like Dark Side back.
Which, by the way,
These dudes-
Darkseid's back.
Yeah,
which
Darkseid is
awesome.
back
Are
at
they-
these. And
Are they
So
really?
good.
yeah, and
Are
like
they-
that. And like they never left. Honestly,
Maybe.
Wow, well, that's good.
it's very good. Yeah, it's
Are they
scary
still
if you
living
see
in
them.
Curse?
Not
Are
sure.
they
They've
chilling
been.
in Hathor?
I'm not sure where they're staging from, but they've been going to, fight Horde and stuff. There's a few videos been on Reddit of them, with a massive blob of Hordelings chasing after them and them shredding loads of stuff. And
The
they're definitely back.
ebb and flow of Russian PvPers is wild and Eve, right? So ProGod was saying earlier like Red Alliance was kind of like down on their luck, but they're coming back. I think the Russians are going to have a resurgence, especially with Darkseid.
Yeah. Well, now that they're back in their homeland, they're starting to get strong.
And they've got special skins now, with like the SeaTac J constellation on it from the
That is cool.
what's it called? It's the fan fest I was traveling around. I forget its name. Invasion Tour. There you go.
That's the first time I've actually thought a skin was cool.
Guarantees.
Don't let
But they
Ron.
got them from the Russian FanFest leg, didn't they?
Yeah.
Participation must have been high for that one.
Yeah, it was actually pretty massive. I saw pictures of it, and the CCPers that I talked to, they went through they're like, holy shit, this was massive, and the whole thing was in Russian too.
Yeah, well, I mean, Russia's been like, I mean, probably the most prominent community in EVE history as far as like a geographical or I guess national community. Like Americans are kind of spread out everywhere, and then like there's been some really big German alliances and some famous French alliances, but like the Russians have dictated EVE politics for so long for the most part.
Yeah, I think the Chinese are going to be the next one. I think
they're the up and comers.
We were talking about this at Vegas with Norris and Wind Spirit. Actually, no, I think it might have just been Wind Spirits. But he was like, yeah, I was talking with him, Sword, and shit, I can't remember who it was, but with Steven Mesner from PC Gamer.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
we were like, yeah, it's funny how EVE like cycles itself around and around and around. But the Russians, it does feel like when the Russians first came, they were treated exactly like the way where the Chinese groups were when they first started coming. And so the writing on the wall is that they're going to take over in like 2 or 3 years with some massive coalition.
That's why I'm glad we backed the right horse and picked some good allies.
Oh yeah, they're just in it for the money. They're gonna backstab you and steamroll you. We discussed this. There's barbecue meat involved. We had this whole thing. They're gonna backstab us too. They're just gonna go roll everyone.
Yeah, and I'm wondering when the first big, like really big Korean alliance is gonna crop up now that they're in the game. I mean, they are flooding into the game. It got to the point because I'm starting to do some streaming stuff too. I was like, is there any way that I can have like a Korean translation on my stream or something like that, because
You
they're
actually
almost half
can.
the streaming community now.
Yeah, it's wild. The Korean
Yeah.
streaming community is like really big, and it's fun to watch them like go out and do, like, for lack of a better term, dumb shit. Like they just do dumb shit that's really fun.
Yeah.
They're not bad or anything. They're just doing goofy stuff. It reminded me of when Brave first started in Eve. I was actually sitting on the undock of a system, and I watched Brave undock against some guy in a Nightmare, and there was like 3 Atrons, and then Nightmare engaged, and then 50 Atrons undocked and killed this Nightmare. I was like, who the hell are these guys? And
Yeah.
like Brave did that, and then before that, I mean, you guys did that, and well, tested. You weren't in test at the time.
I know. People forget that though.
Yeah, the Zergling newbies, and the only saving grace that we have is the server take of EVE Online. So they can click like 50,000 times, and it only count once. So we're good. Yeah, I'm excited for that community to take.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where, because for the longest time, the AU time zone for, just to group it all together, was clearly the deadest time in Eve, and I'm starting to think that, Chinese time zone, AU time zone, like a lot of conflict is shifting to that time zone, and it might, get up there with EU time zone as the time when important things happen.
So now US time zone is the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah, as if it wasn't for the longest time.
Everyone's just gonna time everything for Pacific Prime or
That would be
West
great,
Coast Prime.
honestly. God, I mean, I think some Americans would be really happy, because not a lot happens in U.S. time zone for a while.
Everyone times their SOV timers for US time zone, it seems. Everywhere I go, a week later, everything's US time zone. Slightly
Bringing it back. We're bringing it back.
Yeah, maybe.
No,
the grinding time zone. It's coming home.
I'd love to know some, seeing we've got a graph up on the screen, I'd love to know some stats on, time zone. Like we've seen lots of stats of the players and the time zones and how many players there are in this time zone, that time zone. But how many, alliances and things set their timers? Like where does the graph? I can't get my words to fit, but you know what I mean. Like where do the time zones lie? Like who's time zone tanking people? Because you don't necessarily put the vuln windows to your strongest time zone. Quite often people put it in other places. I'd love to know like what the stats are of how much people set their timers to AU time zone or how much it's set to US time zone. Because EU time is still, I think that is the still peak prime time, right? But
Yeah,
not
I think 8
everything is.
o'clock, 8 p.m. Eve time is still like peak hot. That's where all the good shit happens.
But is
Yeah.
that the most common time to set your vuln windows? That's what I'd like to know.
I don't think a lot of people like to set their vuln windows at EU. I know we usually do USTZ if we're fighting anyone who is really threatened.
Yeah, because you've got like a bigger critical mass than anyone else in for US time zone. Maybe Goons have.
Well, Horde, I think, could match in Goons.
I think Goons have theirs to US time zone.
Actually, test is EU focused now, as weird as that is to say. We get like almost double numbers in EU.
Where's your vuln set?
Well, for the last major war, we put it USTZ, or actually, we just put it whatever was like. I think it was like 2300. It was whatever was like 5 a.m. Chinese time zone time or something like that. Typical time zone taking bullshit.
We all do it. Damn it!
I know. Yeah, you can't. You got to play the game. Don't hate the player. Hate the game.
I mean, it's why the coalition known as Dumpster Coalition has been able to survive for all these years. Like Swords alliances have always been predicated on time zone. Like he always wins the thing. You go to fight him, and then you just bash your head against the wall.
You got to give him credit, because like he moved to Australia and he's like, I'm going to build an AUTZ coalition and basically will be able to fuck with me, and he was kind of right.
Yeah, it's exactly what happened. That's why, like back in the day, like people were always trying to get VDD on their side because they were like the only Australian.
Yeah.
Well, it depends how this next patch goes. Whether they do it as is currently proposed, then Sort's safe. But if they make it so we can have some weekend timers, Sort might have to adjust his strategic political strategy, I guess. It's not really fair on him. I do feel sorry for him because he's made, basically, if you know that you can always have your final timers in the week in your time zone, be it AUTZ, then you make strategic choices based on that. And then if that changes, the strategic choices he's made over the last couple of years, they're fine as they are at the moment. But if you take away his safety in the week and he has to fight on the weekend, then all those strategic choices look a little bit questionable. Like making enemies of potential friends and friends he's chosen that are on the other side of the map and things like that,
That's his MO though, and he makes it work. I don't know. A lot of people like to poo-poo on Sword. He's one of the original names from like 2005. So he's doing something right somehow.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of interesting because last night there was quite a skirmish over an iHub in SeaTac J. And it kind of hits on all of the talking points that you guys just talked about, time zone tanking, more content in this like AU CZ time zone. I was actually watching a stream on it while I was writing up the show notes for this morning. And yeah, it was like this crazy subcap brawl. And it went on for like a few hours, I think, 11% tie-dye. And initiative dropped super capitals at the end and PanFam kind of had to retreat. But yeah, it was just like, Sort Dragon made a deal with Goonswarm to hold off the conflict from coming into his region that negatively affected the relationship between Northern Coalition and Pandemic Horde and Black Legion. And they kind of had to hold off, like, air quote, punishing him because they were dealing with the Imperium invasion.
Punishing him. If that's something that's something that should probably go in the year-end view, because the whole breakdown of GOTG and PanFam relations and who got the blame for that is, I don't know. I always thought it was stupid that they were resetting GOTG after losing a war. Like, I mean, they just got outnumbered, and here they are getting rid of allies. Like, it didn't make sense to me. But
yeah, but the thing is, you got to think of it this way, ProGod. If with those allies you lose the war, what's the point in having those allies anymore? Why sit for 2 years?
Yeah, and that's why they're
being
sitting
friends
in
with everybody.
That's why they're sitting in Journlands right now, and they just had Tribute and Vale glassed without a fight. Like, I mean, at least you look threatening if you've got more people.
But they just lost with GOGG in Pure Blind and Fade.
Barely, like literally barely. Like, I mean, X47 was the armor timer was even, and like the war was full of mistakes. Like, usually, if your team is well coached and you've got a good coach, after you lose, you get together and you're like, hey, how can we win next time? Not like, God, fuck it, let's just not ever play again. Like, Jesus.
I think there's like a decision that had to be made of, do we want to be coalition builders and make the Imperium 2, or do we just want to say, fuck it, let's have some fun, YOLO? And if you're looking at the groups involved, you got NC. which is traditionally more nomadic, Pandemic Legion, traditionally more nomadic, Pandemic Horde, Pandemic Horde. And there you go. Like, it just
could have fooled me after World War B. Everyone seemed to be going after plenty of space after World War B. Couldn't even let some friendly newbie alliances live in their regions. Had to kick them.
Yeah, see, that's exactly the same.
Exactly.
Yeah. Could have built up there, or just said, "Fuck it, YOLO, let's go for the low hanging fruit."
Could have kept CO2 and Tappy in the north. Made a big counter coalition. Then you would have had the Imperium rebuilding.
Well, we could have just killed goons. If we had just put a little more effort.
You can't kill. You can't kill off.
They were on the edge. They were on the edge.
What, of quitting the game?
Yeah, when they moved down to Delve, if we had just gone and sat on their face for another couple months, what else could they have done?
Sat in the NPC stations in Delve, waited until you got bored, and then started playing again, just like everybody does.
They were getting like 100 in fleet when they were taking Delve. They had like nothing.
We're getting a little off topic, but I remember Goons when they had like
good topic though.
30 people. Yeah, when they had 30 people in fleet, and someone in PL named
Decided
Elendar
to
was
go
like,
for the
"Hey,
headshot.
I've got a great idea. They're down and out. Let's just camp them in their home station. It'll be great. We'll take it, and then they'll be gone.
That wasn't
from
your
here
idea. That
forever."
was Billy Merck's idea, right?
That was that was Elendar and B. Mark's idea. Both of which who are
Yeah.
kind of back in the game now.
Really? That's awesome.
Fintroll is quietly playing in Horde. And I think Elendar is back in PL, but not super active.
Before we wrap this one up, let me just say, imagine if, the North had done everything that we perceived to be right to make themselves be able to not lose that war, the X-47 war, whenever that was. So they had made an industrial base. They had not.
You really didn't take much. It's just like, hey,
let me finish. However easy it would have been, if they'd taken that easy route and done all of that, would there have been any war? If you have two equal and opposite strengths, like who's going to go to war with who then in the current mechanics or the mechanics of the time?
Well, the events weren't put in motion by Goons. If we remember, they were put in motion by the North when PL invaded Test. That's what set the
Team
war in
YOLO.
motion. So yeah. So I mean, it seems like you guys thought you were going to win anyway. If I can win the war for you. It's very simple. Like someone just like tugs on Vince Draken's T-shirt and says, "Hey, let's stage in a system we can Sino jam. How about that?" Yeah, that's all you really got to do.
It's funny when you are going through these campaigns and stuff. There's the right answers, right? The logical, reasonable answers. But then you get these FCs and campaign commanders in a Discord, and everyone has their own opinion about how things should go, and emotions really heat up, and then it just kind of goes sideways from there. So that's basically what happened in like 2017 to 2019 in the North. Is like there was the right decision, but everyone kind of took their ball and said, "Fuck you, I'm going home."
There's like the smart decision, the bad decision, and then the fun decision, which is just the bad decision, but with which is, I mean, it's what, yeah, with more explosions. But that's what led to the Northern, like PanFam, losing tribute and all that area and being forced into.
Like that's what's so interesting about Eve is like you're trying to do a 2019 review, but everything in Eve is so connected. It's always the history is always it kind of always you're leading up to it. So like we could talk about 2019, but it's hard to talk about 2019 without talking about what happened in 2018, and then you inevitably talk about what happened in 2017, and decisions we made 3 or 4 years ago were still kind of affecting
suddenly
things.
It gets really heated. I'm standing up wishing I had a desk like Pro God.
Yeah. You'd be a better FC if you had it, man. You got to get your legs into it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, before we start writing Empires of Eve Part 3, let's fast forward to this month and let's go through some news really quickly. Last week, Pittsburgh, Chasu, and other members of the Delve Pest Control did something really interesting, something that could not be done according to one of an unnamed Goon FC. They had
are we calling Pittsburgh the Queen of Thorns now?
We'll see. He's in chat right now, so we'll see if he likes it or not.
We skipped an important part of that story, and that is Pittsburgh leaving the Imperium in the first though with this top secret intelligence about how to defeat the mighty Locust. Okay, He came running off with the blueprints for the Death Star.
Yeah, why did Pittsburgh leave Goons? What happened there? Can anyone recap that?
Can I give you my version with no evidence or backing or anything behind it?
I don't see what's wrong with that.
He started thinking the wrong way. Man started to think about exploding spaceships instead of traveling 8 regions to defend some dudes that flew to him.
Goons are well known for calling wrong think.
Yep.
So essentially, he had taken some fleets out, or was taking a fleet out, and staged out of or used a staging fort that you can't launch an attack from because some paper pushers had pushed some papers in their right order and filled out the forms in triplicate. And
Yeah,
so
we
they're
got
like,
very
"Oh,
mad about that.
this is one too many. Throw this guy out on the street." And then they threw him out on the street, and then he joined Trigger Happy, which, I mean, we're kind of skipping a little bit towards the end, but like if we're gonna
Pittsburgh
just
in chat
look at
says
the
there was no rule.
so
He wasn't violating any rule.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because Scoons are famous for kicking FCs when they whelp ships.
Really? TBRB?
No, not really. I'm being sarcastic. Of course not.
Okay.
Of course not. So obviously, that's not the reason he got kicked, was it? He didn't buy Matani a drink at Vegas or something.
Either way, there was something that he was deemed to be violating, and they had to kick him, and he joined Kendar's alliance. Who, like I was saying, if
he
we
was
fast forward,
he was violating our pride by killing our ratters.
Trigger Happy is probably going to be like the up and coming alliance of 2019 if we have to do like a wrap up or something. So that's late. He's joined them and then just completely obliterated the Rorqual fleet.
Well, he started out well at Trigger Happy, didn't he? Didn't he use his vendetta in combat a couple of days ago, successfully or not? I can't remember.
There was a successful attempt and then an unsuccessful attempt.
He was going back to his roots, basically. He was doing a structure bash.
Yeah. You can take take the tiger out of the jungle, but not the jungle out of the tiger, something like that.
I remember the people that usually, I know Pinef from Israd, one of my favorite people in EVE Online, used to love fishing for people and fishing for different like whales. And Pittsburgh was always like in the area of where Pinef wanted to go after, trying to nab him because he knew Pittsburgh would A, not be afraid to use like the ships, and B, actually was one of the FCs that was, I guess, authorized to drop caps and stuff. So we'd always try and bait it out, and Pittsburgh would basically like 99 times out of 100 like suss out exactly what was going on and just bait Pina for like hours, it felt like. So we'd be sitting on like wormholes trying to get the Pittsburgh to drop, and then he would pretend like he was going to, just to keep us on the edge of his seats, but then not do it.
Good times.
So at the end of the day, in the same week, Pittsburgh lost his vendetta. Sad face. Goonswarm lost about 400 bill in Rorquals when they had tried to save their fleet. They had, I think the crux of why this mission worked is they had waited until they were moving out of the belt, so they didn't have any rocks to panic on. So they were pretty much at their most vulnerable spot, and they had moved a blue Sino in and signed up the dreads on. So it's kind of funny, or not funny, but just interesting looking how the relationship between prey and predators work in EVE. Goonswarm is known to be very organized, and that level of organization has to be met or exceeded by the people working to attack them. So it was months of coordination, months of sitting down. How are we going to do this? Moving assets and moving people, and trying to keep this, under wraps between, probably a group of 6 or 7 guys, and it worked. And so, yeah, it's always really interesting looking at this dynamic push and pull relationship between your Rorquals, and then your super carrier fleet coming in, and the people trying to initiate this drop. So that was a really good piece of news.
Yeah, it was incredible to see it actually happen. And as you were saying, like the Imperium is such a well-oiled machine in terms of like just everything basically, but in terms of organization, that it's a real testament to their like organizational prowess that this had never happened before. Like the amount of like hard work and effort that went into it, and a little bit of luck too, because you have to be a little bit lucky in these things, for this Locust fleet to die just once in like 4 years. So props to both sides for putting a lot of effort in.
We had made enough money to cover the losses in those 4 years.
Yeah, we did the math. It was like 27 delve minutes. You fuse the
Although their numbers are kind of going down in the MER lately.
The MER is always fun to look at, especially when some new groups are starting to pop up. I know you guys tried to jump up in the MER.
Yeah, I think we're getting up there. Or we did for a little bit, and then war happened and all that. But I don't know. Tess just doesn't have the same Care Bear spirit. I think in our heart we're warriors, and we'd always prefer to be on the battlefield than in the farmlands.
Oh, if eye rolls could make sounds.
If to be honest though, this might not be a popular opinion, but I think goons are the same. You know, they paint a good picture, and they've encouraged their sort of narrative to like mine as much as they can, and we love this. Da, 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 da. But like you said, the MER shows a bit of a dip as well. You know, there's only so much ratting and mining you can do before it gets a little bit boring if it's not punctuated with some meaningful conflict, rather than a little bit of subcap fighting
which is
3-4
strange
regions over.
because EVE
Is that
Online has
strange?
such because EVE Online has such engaging PvE content. You
Oh,
would
okay.
think that people would be happy to do it for the longest
I
time.
nearly stood up again then.
Yeah, I'm lucky that I get a salary and I don't have to do that. So
An ISK salary, guys. An ISK salary.
yeah, in this salary, yeah. Yeah, I got to be careful about that.
Spicy wings, you mean?
Because that's happened before.
That's happened.
Unfortunately, I never got a deal. I remember hearing about that, and I was like, God, how do I get on that shit?
2019 also kind of felt like the year that maybe if we frame it this way, the year that organization and structure won out. So you have a lot of smaller alliances, middling alliances that had a lot of success earlier on in their lives, and then just completely. So you have Skill Yourself, who Capco and the boys, they made a name for themselves by evicting the DRF as like this tiny group. They went up against an entire federation and kicked them all out and took all. You have them saying, closing up shop. See you guys later. Gonna go play. And then you have a bunch of other groups later on in 2019, which we'll probably get to next week or maybe the week after, because this is, after all, a series of shows that we're doing. It's not just one show covering all of 2019, because that would be impossible. We're going to be talking about 2019 stuff and having different guests on all throughout the month of December.
Rip Skill you. Never felt so sad and depressed about in Eve than when that shit happened. Didn't even realize at the time. It took a few weeks for it to sink in, but I had to stop playing for like 3 months because of it. I just couldn't. It finished me off. Just couldn't. I was so sad. Had such a nice thing going. There was no sort of one bad thing happening that made it happen. The Barrow and Capco just decided, forget this. Gonna go play WoW. CCP don't want us to fight in this game anyway. See you later.
I think part of it was
time to go run scripted dungeons.
They're PvPing. They stole Ragnar Bile as well. He's at their PvPing and WoW.
Okay.
I know what they do. Knife people or something. Shanking everybody.
Cripes. World of Warcraft. Supporting Blizzard in 2019.
Right?
All right, for final piece of news, while we're on this subject, Hard Knocks has decided to fold their rental empire into Horde. Most of their corps in the East, especially the corps that have the highest members, have all folded into PBIC, which is Horde's rental alliance. So that's going to be really interesting. I feel like that's like a move that is setting stuff up for in the future. So
I hate to kind of damper that, but it's pretty standard. They're probably going to pay Hard Knocks a cut. It's easier to defend if it's all under one banner. They already had a deal anyway.
It's
That's
mostly
why the
a name
space is
change,
there.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Hard Knocks. When did Hard Knocks pack it in as the Wormhole group? Haven't they packed it in as well? Or?
No, they came back. They said they were, and then they didn't. Like I remember that when they said they were, and then they after Initiative blew up the Keepstar, they said they were going to pack it in, and then they kind of like said, no, we can't let it die, and they kept it going, and now they're strong again.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they were collecting rent between those periods. I think someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is in the murky world of rental contracts and who gets what. But it may be the case. I'll say that it may be the case that Hard Knocks, the wormholers, weren't collecting the rent from Hard Knocks associates, because there was a lot of rental.
we used to have a Hard Knocks high command spy, but when they said they were closing shop, we burned it just for Reddit upvotes, and then they kept it going, and we felt like fucking idiots. So like at the time they were splitting the rent, or they were talking about splitting the rent with PanFam, which is what I'm assuming they're doing. But especially with the name change now. But like, I mean, the fact that Hard Knocks owned that soft next to PanFam and there was no like conflict or anything kind of shows that the deal was in place already. It's just a name change.
So I have a little bit of insight because I was the
Obviously.
first person to sell a renting empire to anyone. The way it usually works, because it actually plays out really well, is when you sell or when you transfer your rental alliance to someone else, you actually sell it for like a sum that gets paid out monthly. So let's say you sell it for 4 trillion
10 chicken wings.
Yeah, or chicken
Hot
or hot
wings
wings
preferred, please.
So you sell it for like say 1 trillion ISK, then every month you get a certain amount. You get like 30% of whatever the rental was until you hit that amount though, that you agreed upon. So you're essentially buying someone out by just splitting profit sharing until they reach a certain amount, which is likely what happened, but who knows for real? Only a couple people know, and we're not. But it does seem likely that that's what happened. And Horde's renting empire, the PIBC, is different from the one that's on Serenity, or was on Serenity. So it's just another meme name, guys. Don't worry.
Well, there you go. Bronze is saying we, and I presume he means the Skill U survivors after the squash. He does. He's my director. Sold PIBC for 2 months' rent.
Oh, there you go.
Nice. That's good.
You could have worked that out a little bit better. I think you could have gotten more money from that.
Well,
2 months rent.
it's hard. It's hard to make
if you're
people,
a dead alliance, you don't have a lot of leverage.
Yeah, it's hard to make people stick to a deal with people that essentially don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So you make a deal with Capgu and Barra, and then Capgu and Barra are shanking people in a forest somewhere. It doesn't really. No one sticks to that deal.
They got their robes and wizard hats on, elf stuff going, casting fireballs.
Crunching numbers, yeah.
Other big news that is actually kind of massive that was announced. I think I hinted at earlier in the month, but announced officially is that Minxie from Signal Cartel is going on a extended hiatus. She used, I don't know if she did this on purpose, but she used like the similar phrase that CB Falcon used for the Alliance tournament, an extended hiatus. But then basically said that she was quitting for the foreseeable future. Minxie, if you haven't know, Signal Cartel, they're the ones that go into wormholes and help you out, and they're actually pretty cool dudes. They do tons of stuff. I'm oversimplifying it, but if you don't know Signal Cartel, you should figure out who Signal Cartel is and #educate you. But they're great. They're still going to be around. She just stepped down from leadership. Before that, she was also the chairwoman for the CSM, which was pretty huge. And before that, she ran a pirate group called Hellcats, which was like I think it was an all-girl pirate corp.
It was an all-female pirate corp, yeah.
Starting from like 2004 until like 2007 or 8. She was also in Veto, which is another pirate corp. So she was like this incredibly massive figure. She was great to talk to. She was great to have insights from. And she's focusing on personal stuff, and announced today that she was hanging up her pod or her capsule for a little while. So long, Minxie. Thanks for everything. You were absolutely great. To Eve, we're worse off, but good luck in the future.
For our final piece of news, ProGod, you are raffling off something special this Tuesday. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so the Hypernet's coming on Tuesday. There's basically Eve's only an exclusive Hypernet relay community summer club is link going in chat in a second. 1 second. Is sponsoring the raffle of a Raven State issue, which I have to be completely honest, where unfortunately the way CCP has it set up right now is that there's a hard cap on the amount of tickets you can offer. It's at 512, and so because of the price of the Raven State issue that is being set, the individual tickets are pretty expensive. They're going to be somewhere between 7 and 8 billion ISK, which, I know a lot of people who would be willing to throw down a billion ISK just for a small chance, but the interest for 8 billion ISK tickets is pretty low. As much hype as we've been able to generate for it, we've had a lot of people plugging it, pinging in a lot of different places, and people getting mad at us for setting high ticket prices. I'd love to offer more tickets and lower the ticket price, but this is one of the rarest items. There's one in, there's only 4, and so
4
they don't.
tickets?
No, 4 Raven State issues in the entire game.
Okay.
And so they don't go on sale very often, and the price, whatever the seller wants to sell, that's kind of what you got to go for if you want one. But I think if we could have like at least 2,000 tickets and the price were like 2 billion or 1 billion, then this thing would sell in a heartbeat. But at 8 billion, I've been trying to kind of gauge interest. So far, I think, we've got people committed for like 200 tickets, which I don't think is enough. I think if it's going to be a lot like Kickstarters, where if it doesn't fill, at least for a big event, a big item like this, if it doesn't hit at least 50% in the first 24 hours, it's not going to get there. So what we do have is a backup plan. If it's looking like the Raven State issue isn't gonna work, we've got at least an equal amount or close to an equal amount of AT ships and
So
T2 BPOs, extremely expensive, all the officer mods and abyssal mods and shit like that. We've got a load of stuff to auction up, which was the original plan before someone came to me with the Raven State issue. And then the Raven State issue is so expensive, we're like, we can't put up 4 or 5 AT ships right next to this thing because people will run out of money. We kind of pivoted and said we're just going to do the Raven State issue with some small shit, and now we might go back to the AT. We're going to play it by ear and see how it goes. But regardless, on Tuesday at 1900, I'm gonna put the stream up, and we're going to be raffling off a lot of really good shit. I just bought my own Atana to raffle. So
does if you don't sell enough tickets, does it not go on the thing?
So the way it's set up is if you don't fill the raffle, if you don't sell all the tickets, everyone gets their money back. Everyone who bought a ticket gets their money back. The sales tax, which is 5%, doesn't kick in, but you do lose all the hypernodes, the hypercores, I think. I've been using Summer Blink terminology to talk about it. I don't really know what they are in game. I think they're hypercores. You lose all those that you bought to put it on the Hypernet relay, which we don't know the price yet, but
it's the only one that loses out if you don't sell all the tickets.
Yeah, you lose somewhere between like 5 to 10% of the value of what you set the raffle at, which is, for like an item like the Raven State issue, the seller's going to lose like 350 billion ISK if it doesn't fill. Like, it's a big deal.
So to me, like, you should have started a bit smaller, to like really build up people's addiction to
no shit, right?
No shit. Then you could go in big with the Ravens near the end. I mean, I don't really gamble; it's against my religion. But if I did, I would have started off with like one AT ship and had like slightly cheaper tickets, really get them hooked, and then near like maybe a month's time, bang out the Raven State.
Well,
just once the hype started to wane, then you go with the Raven State.
Yeah, well, lessons learned, I guess. We always fly a little too close to the sun, but we'll see how it goes. It's either going to be a Raven State issue or a lot of AT ships, one way or the other. But it's going to be a big event on Tuesday. We're going to try and kick it off because I liked Summer Blink. I know a lot of people like Summer Blink. It was a really cool service. I know some people had some opinions on CCP running it instead of players and didn't necessarily like that idea, but it's back. However, it's back. We finally get to do it again, and I kind of want to have some fun with it. Let me link the Discord in chat.
I love the motto of Pro God. Like, we tried. It's a good motto to have, right?
I mean, it's,
For the start.
we talked about it last Thursday. We were like, do you think we can really get a Raven State issue? And they were like, maybe. And then I was like, fuck, maybe. Let's of course we can. Let's just go for it. I'll keep hating posts to the top of Reddit. We'll get there.
It's risky business, but I know at least like 3 or 4 people that have said that they're going to buy 60 tickets. And they probably haven't talked to you about it. So I have a feeling
haven't. That would be great, because then we could still go forward with it.
People that want this thing, it's like the collector's edition ship, right? Like,
yeah,
it's the swaggiest ship you can have in EVE besides the Federation Mega.
Yeah, it's up there with that. I think there are a couple others that are like 1 in 3 or 1 in 4. How many gold magnets are there? I'm trying to remember.
They put out more gold magnets, and they kind of got watered down a little bit.
Yeah, that sucks.
There's also the Tempest Tribal issue, which was the second place prize for the AT that gave out the State Ravens. So Tribal Tempest, there's only 4 of those, and I don't know how many are actually still in game anymore. And I think there's only 2 Fed Thron.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, there's only 1, because I talked to Entity about it, who owns it, and he said that will never go on sale. He has a really cool story about how he got it. He actually scammed someone for it. They only ship in the game. He fucking scammed someone for it. Someone else had it, and he got it. I don't know if he wants to tell his story publicly. I'm sure he does, but I'll let him do that. But it's a really good story how he got it, and he's
I'm pretty sure I know who he scammed it from too.
Yeah. But I don't think that will ever go up. So I mean, the Raven State issue's up there. We were looking at AT ships. There's quite a few in game of each. I actually think the Atana might be the rarest AT ship, just because of how many have actually been blown up and banned and shit like that.
It's the Atana and the Cambion that are the rarest ones. The Atana mostly because it's super good and it's been blown up a lot. So, and the Cambion, Somer Blink ended up buying, and I1S ended up buying a lot of those, so they're just all sitting on banned accounts. So
pouring one out. Yeah, I noticed the AT ship market's kind of heating up a little bit before the raffles. I think people are going to wait a little bit and test the waters. I'm going to say that if you want to make sure your AT ship sells, you need to join the Summer Club Discord and join the community and make sure there's interest and you got good advertising. So make sure you join that Discord. But otherwise, I'm excited for it. I think now that we're kind of slowly getting back into gambling in EVE, we can get some of the peak goal is to get poker back. But we've got some other fun games planned until we get poker back. It's not just Hypernet stuff. I kind of want to get a little bit back into the gambling of EVE. It was good times when it was there, and it's kind of been like Black Friday all over again.
I do want to mention one thing as we're talking about Alliance tournament adjacent type things. The Invasion World Tour tournament, the online segment of it, is going on right now. The finals actually are next week that I will be commentating with a few other people. We will be the live commentary will be for the semifinals and the finals, and the winner will get a trip to Reykjavik, Iceland for FanFest. To play against the other pair of 7 winners from the Invasion World Tour EVE meet. So that's actually pretty cool. It's obviously not a replacement for the Alliance tournament, not meant to be a replacement for the Alliance tournament, but that's going on right now. You should see some fun explosions. And next week, be sure to tune in to either the CCV channel or the EVE NT channel. One of us will be having live commentary with explosions to see who gets to go forward for the last set of people to go to win their trips to FanFest.
Certainly going to be pretty exciting to watch. All right. Well, I think that is it for today. Tune in next week. We're going to be proceeding down the year. We've got some very exciting things that have yet to be talked about. And then I can say this now, but in 2 weeks, we are planning a very special show with some of the CCP community devs. So things are quite not yet finalized. It's still a little bit too early to set hard dates, but just for a little teaser there, it's something that me and one of the other CCP community devs have been putting together. So tune in December 22nd, and we might have something very special for you. Thank you, ProGod and Harvey, for being with us today. We'll see you next time on Talking in Stations.
Do we get a shout out?
Yeah.
I got a shout out to give.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd like to give a shout out to my my corpy Tin Baron. He's my mining director, and he's been making some videos. And he was very upset last week when a Hyperion in front of the sun, a screenshot of it, got more votes than his carefully crafted PvP video. So if you look on the front page of Reddit, Tin Baron's post, he's put a video there. It's got spaceships exploding in it and people shouting stuff and talking and that, all the good stuff that you like. Give him a little upvote. Let's not get him overvoted by an Astero in a wormhole screenshot or something like that.
There's also ship
Fucking
girls that you can
Harvey,
update,
man.
upvote instead. Ship
Yeah.
girls better than PvP videos.
Yeah. I got a shout out to my old buddy Didia Hold'em. He's back in the game. He's playing again. Glad to see him back. He's kind of he's in a stepping stone corp right now, kind of getting his feet wet before he joins a real PvP organization.
How do you know? He is the leader of an alliance, a very good alliance, somewhere in the north.
Yeah.
Has this company.
Well, it's a little bit below his stature. Maybe he'll step back up to the big leagues in a little bit. But glad to see him back. He's a good man and good FC. There's a lot of people coming back, so that's
and you can hear his voice on Tin Baron's video talking about spaceships and explosions and calling targets.
There you go. Ex-Nully FC, another ex-Nully FC leading an alliance. Former Nully FC has basically been running this game for 4 or 5 years now, between PL and NC Dot and whatever alliance Harvey's in, and of course Test as well. So if you guys don't know, look the history up. You need to. It's kind of like Bill Belichick's coaching tree, essentially.
Yeah, I never knew that Billy was in Nully. Oh well, you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
All right. Can I sign off for reals?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. See you all next week.
Bye.